let's begin for today. Does it work? Yeah, everything seems to be working. Looks like the quality is slightly weird. Yeah, good. Then let me do this. I've changed the streaming software I'm using. Now it's Streamlabs OBS. You can see it in here. Because I'm hoping it will fix the issue with inputs. Then what else did I want to start with? Okay. Hey everyone! You might see a different picture because I've changed the streaming software, but it shouldn't matter that much. Last time we had some issues with input systems and which I got through, but then we had an issue with the queue that I tried to create because it didn't work properly. I was doing something wrong. I've been thinking about that issue for some time and actually fixed it outside the stream, so I will just tell you what I did and why. Then, when I was testing it, I again returned this sphere object into my stones, so I should delete it. Yeah, I should open prefab. I just love this prefab editor, it's so cool. And I just delete the whole thing. Yeah, good. And back to the scene, and it's removed everywhere. That's nice. That's nice. Also, I've created a video on my YouTube channel on how to fix the issue with VS Code not working properly with Unity CS Proj creation. And you can watch it in there. It might be helpful for some people. So, I cannot find any to-dos in here, which is weird, because I have some. At least I had to explain what happened on the stream. Okay. And also today's stream will be comparatively short because I started it a bit too late and I still have my daily job to do. But still, we're finishing with some tasks, we're moving to the next one, we're creating new steps for us, so we shouldn't make it too long. Okay, first, what I did. Instead of just circular array, I've created CircularArray queue, adding more words to stuff, and now it really behaves as if it's a queue. I have two different positions saved all the time, the current position and current start. They move sequentially as I add new items to the array, so the array is circular. Then when I try to add something, I first check that I haven't completed the circle. If I have completed it, then I'm removing one item and adding one more. If we haven't yet reached the count, then we're just adding the item. We're adding it into the current position and we're not moving start. But when we're popping an item out of that queue, we will move the starting position. That's just how it works. And this works like a charm. What I'm doing with this... Oh yeah, and I've created default items for queue, which I don't really use. Then on top of that, I've created a time framing for this stuff. Let me make sound a bit like this. So, on top of that, I'm creating a time-framed circular array queue, adding even more words. So this thing tracks the summarized count of everything, and it tracks the current time. When it tries to push something and the current time is too big, means hi Nicker, means our time frame moved out of the limit that we have. We remove something from the queue, we check that now the time is in the desired frame, and just continue going ahead. We don't remove anything if it's the single item, which means if you have a really low FPS like 3 frames per second for now. Now I have it set for 3 frames per second. Your throw of an item will depend on one single frame. You'll not be able to really manage something or whatever, but if you're playing a game with 3 FPS, you shouldn't expect any good controls. That is just not happening. Anything below 30 FPS is not how stuff should work, so it seems to be pretty fine. And yeah, when we push, we summarize the current sum and we always keep track of it, so it's easier for us and we don't have to go through all the elements to get our final data. Then I've made some changes to the simple interactive object. Oh yeah, I even remember where the task was, but okay. First, I've added one more queue. Now we have velocity queue and rotation queue. One of them will impact the velocity of an item, so how fast the item will move after we decided to let it go. The second one will decide where it will fly with that speed. For now, the rotation queue is just twice the size of velocity, which means if you're moving slowly but steadily, you will throw item higher with the same speed than if you're moving faster but for a shorter distance. And that's basically it. That's the only thing it means. And vice versa, if you're moving fast and long, you will shoot the item high into the sky and it will fly far away. I tried it outside the stream and it feels more or less consistent with my feeling of how it should be. Then, the next thing I wanted to explain is what I do with this rotation queue, because just having it and having it as twice the size of seconds to remember is interesting, but not interesting enough. Here, as if you remember the code that was here, it was just velocity calculation, and then I've put velocity into the rigid body. Rigid body is the controlling unity that tells the object where to fly, how to move, how to collide, and things like that. Now two things happened. First, I'm only tracking hand movement in the X and Z coordinates. So I'm setting Y coordinate of directions to 0 all the time. With this change, the movement of an object is closer bound to the movement of your mouse and less bound to the obstacles you have on your course. For example, imagine some mountain, you're making a slight movement with your hand, but it moves a lot on the Y coordinate because there is a slope. Now I'm taking this into account and I will not let you throw too hard just because of the land shaft. Then, after I've calculated the velocity vector, I'm rotating it. Rotation is a quaternions. Finally, we came to the quaternions. And what I'm doing is, first I'm selecting a vector around which I'm going to rotate. I can show it to you here. So, now we have some movement. Let's imagine we're trying to throw there. It's two-dimensional because Y coordinate is always 0. Then in the real game, let's look at the Y coordinate. So this is Y and this is X and Z combined. We have this vector and it's always, let me draw it with some color. This. So we have this vector and it will always stick to the ground. If we let something fly like this, it will collide the ground right away. This is not something we want. We don't really care about stones when we do this, because if they collide they will jump out and they will fly somewhere, which is more or less fine. But with fireballs, for example, we want the point of contact to be exactly where we want it to be. So I'm trying to rotate this. Let me change the color back. I should use something instead of paint now that I have the drawing tablet. So we want this vector to be here, and we want to rotate it by some angle. So this angle depends on our rotation Q. We should rotate it around some vector that is facing out from us in this right picture. So this is perpendicular in the X and Z frame to the one that we had, like this. So this is velocity, and this is normal, so-called. It's pretty easy to calculate those vectors. It's always minus z and x, and the opposite direction is z and minus x. It's, just believe me, that's how math works. This is perpendicular, both of them. I need to select only one of them, which will make my rotation work right. So I've just done again some math and some testing and found that this one is the one I need. It's always the same regardless of where the object is really facing. That doesn't matter for us at all. Then we calculate the angle we want to rotate around that vector. And the angle is calculated in a rather simple way. I get the distance traveled inside the rotation Q and limit it to some max angle distance. I've specified it to 200 meters, but it just tells at which point we'll get maximum distance regardless of the distance we traveled. And multiplying it by max angle, dividing by this. So I just get the proportion, and it's really straightforward. Then this angle in degrees we put into quaternion.angle axis. We're rotating for this angle around this axis, and to get a vector from a quaternion and vector, you just multiply them. That's it, as simple as that. And then we have the velocity here, we're clearing all the Q's, and that's all the changes I've made outside the stream, and now all those stones are flying properly. I'm not sure I will be able to show it to you. Hopefully the new software will make the input lag less. It's still bad, it's better, but it's still bad. So like this, or if it's short movement, then it will fly with different, you see, I've dropped them from the same place, but one of them flew up and the other flew right with the ground. We will need to update this at some point anyway, because the forces may be too big, the stuff may be too high. But right now there is nothing to compare size of those stones to, and there is no way to feel what is really happening. That's why I will just leave it as is. For some reason mouse scroll stopped working for me right now. Oh, and a bunch of stuff stopped working for me. Oh. Okay, so first mouse rotation stopped working. That's funny. This is weird. Rotation, so turning the camera around stopped working, and the mouse scroll stopped working. I did something wrong with controls along the way. So the latest changes I did here was that I've included this stuff, and probably I should not have. On middle mouse button, started. This should not do this. I've tried to create a video on how which values those things have, and I didn't really succeed with that video so far, because for some reason they seem to be changing. haven't figured entirely how that works. Let's double check that I have everything set here in the right way. No parameters, mouse scroll, mouse, okay, good. Then why the scrolling doesn't work? On, right mouse button, middle, on mouse scroll, scrolling, on scroll. Should work. If only I... Yeah, so I moved logics to the process part, but yeah, I'm processing it. Good. Let's try again. The scroll still doesn't work, and the rotation still doesn't work. Why? So this thing is not being processed. If should not process, then false. Okay, we figured this issue, and with camera rolling controller, camera scrolling controller, again, should not process, then do something, then not do anything. Let's double check that it's like this everywhere. It doesn't matter. Okay, good. Now everything should work. Yeah, the scroll works now fine, and the rotation works fine. Good. So now we're finally done with throwing rocks. Yeah, the behavior is noticeably better with OBS. I don't know what was the issue. Good. Now we probably should move on to something new. Because this stuff is fun and all, but we've spent a lot of time on this. Actually, I'm feeling slightly weird, because I've spent lots of time, let's be honest, on this project so far. I mean, not lots, it's less than 20 hours. But 24 hours is a hackathon, let's say. And it feels like I wouldn't have completed this game on a hackathon. Which feels weird. Probably that's because I'm explaining everything on stream. Probably that's because I had to get into Unity again. It just feels like I'm a bit slower than I should be. Okay, steps. Input delay. We get it solved with like we hacked it. We're using the different streaming software now, but okay, it's fixed, means it's fixed. Explain timeframe CircularArray queue. Explained. Explain quaternions. Okay. If you want to know what a quaternion is, you can look up a video about that or ask me separately. I will create a separate video about this stuff. Quaternion is in general, is a complex number which doesn't contain just 2 parts, it contains 4 different parts. And it's widely used in 3D graphics to rotate stuff. And those 4 numbers justify an axis around which we're rotating and the angle. That's basically what quaternion is. And it's really easy to do something with them, because to rotate with a quaternion, you just multiply your vector by this. It's really a mathematical multiplication of vectors. That's it. But to explain this stuff, it's a bit tricky. Then think of a tree. I was... One second. Mommy goes shh, shh, shh. But the kid is sitting there. Should I continue talking? I'm sorry. Okay, so I'll try to be less noisy. If you could close the door at least, or like. Okay, your choice. So, think of a tree. I was thinking about adding something like a tree and trying to throw it in here. I'm not sure I should do it right now. It's a slightly different type of interaction where I should somehow highlight that you're about to grab the tree and when you finally moved it out from the ground. But that stuff is really bound to animation, it's not bound to anything else. And I already have the logics that says that you grabbed something only when you released the button, so I don't think this will make much of a difference, and I will not make a proper tree on this stage, so let's just archive this and move somewhere. What? I archived you. Okay. Something went wrong with Trello. Okay, it got moved. Then, look into input system. We done looking into input system, we migrated to the new style and we're feeling good about it. At least I'm feeling good about it. I'm not sure about you guys. Can make it a bit bigger. Then put something interactive. Yeah, now we have interactive stones. You can really interact with them. Next step was to create spells. Okay, let's move to the next step. Then, what should we do to think that we created spells? We need to first I'm thinking which direction we should move here. Some spells behave like they are simple objects that you can throw, for example a fireball. Some spells behave differently, they are more complex, and some do something while you're holding mouse button or something like that. And spells actually can sometimes disappear from your hand while you're interacting with that. For example, when you have a cloud, you're casting it, and then it just disappears before you throw it. I'm thinking if I should create some generic system or I shouldn't bother. I think I shouldn't bother. Let's go with something simple. What can be simple here? Okay, I need first think about types of spells and their interaction. Second, add steps about each type / interaction. And logic for spells to interact with interactive objects, with affectable. And I guess that's it. Think about gestures. And what else should I do? Think of a way to cast / uncast spell. This should happen. I will have to do it at some point when I start actually creating the spell inside the hand, because I will need some way to create it. But I won't reprioritize this in any way. I will just move stuff to done. Oh, I moved. I should put this and make something. Where is that stuff? Put a generic, make initial, migrate, put something interactive. This. I like the done block to get bigger and bigger as time goes by. Then, is there anything else about spells right now? I don't think so. I don't really have any affectable objects right now, but I will need to think about the way of their interaction ahead. Okay. Let's go to thinking. I'll just open something like this, and we should list ways we can cast something and what that something should do. Okay, first I was talking about for ages is Fireball. You throw it, it flies on points of contact, sets fire. What is that fire? For objects, the fire burns them and can move to adjacent objects. I'm not sure that adjacent is really how it's spelled, but okay. For terrain, creates particle system. I say that or maybe really burns. So there are two options. If my fireball collides into the terrain, should it burn in there? And like if something comes into it, or if you put something on top, then it just starts burning. Or if it's a fake fire and it's just a particle effect. I think it's better to make it real fire. Fire object that will stay for some time and dissolve. And that's all it does. Second, water cloud. You cast it as if in a long time casting, hold an interaction button, and as you hold the interaction button, what should something interesting happen? It has some limited time to leave, to cast, and disappears after the time. If you stop casting before it disappears, remembers its state. Then, anything like lightning or whatever behaves the same way, absolutely the same way. It just is being cast from the place where you're holding it. That's it. Water cloud / lightning / something. Point of contact spells. Like Great Forest, lightning, food creation, wood creation, whatever. So it's like Great Forest, what else? Some here and now, miracles, healing, maybe something like that. You cast it, releasing interaction button. like throw, but without throwing, you put there. Then shape waste spots. Shield, for example. You draw a shape and it appears the way it appears is somehow relevant to the shape. I'm not entirely sure how it's relevant and what should happen. I don't think I can create custom formed spells like shield that will have some, like you draw the line and whatever the line looks like, it just pops up the shield, because it will be too hard to calculate real form of that shield. I think I will make it a sphere, and it will always adjust somehow to whatever you drew. It would expect you to draw something close to a sphere, I mean hemisphere. Are there any other types of possible interactions? So first I'm holding the interaction button, second I'm throwing something, third I'm just putting something on the ground, fourth I draw some shape and something happens inside that shape. I'm not sure there are any other ways of interaction. Movement, throwing, casting on the place. We might add something that is being cast while you're moving without interaction button, but that wouldn't make any sense, because it will not let you decide where to actually cast the stuff. So I don't think we should think about that, even think about that. Okay, so now let's add steps. Throwing spell. Come on. Spell. And for throwing spell, you throw it, it flies, blah blah blah, this stuff. Then overtime spell. I keep misspelling word spell. This, and it's like water, cloud, light, equation, stuff like that. I'm basically taking the spells we all know and putting them here. If we come up with something new along the way, then we can just add it where it is necessary. Point of contact spell. Something like this. And shape-based spells. Or even gesture-based spell. Gesture-based spell. Good. Okay, we've been thinking about types, we added some steps, and now we should just walk over those steps. Before even adding any interaction at all, before thinking about gestures, maybe something like this, think of a way to cast and uncast spell. We'll think about it later. Okay, what is the easiest type of spell? Let me check in the throwing rocks is done. It is a really good idea to keep all your code in a repo, because otherwise you might lose it at some point, and losing your code is something you never want to happen. And it happened to almost all the developers at one point or the other in their lives. Okay. So which type should we go with first? Throw-in seems to be the easiest because it is based on the simple throw-in object. It just has slightly different collider interactions, I think. That's it. So let's do this. Objects. Okay, new folder, spells. We'll create new file, throw-in spell .cs, of course. And it's public class throw-in spell based off simple interactive object. What should it have? I don't think it should have anything. I think first let's do this. Unity mono behavior. Must contain collider, let's see. Derive from behavior or component interacting with self collider parameter. Okay, whatever. Should we do anything about it at all? Before we move to any interactions? Again, I don't think so. Let's do this. First, it cannot be picked up, unlike this thing. So for start interaction will always be called on start or on awake, something like that. By this time, this thing should know the hand that is being used. But I think I will manually call this start interaction. So that shouldn't matter. It should stay in a different layer, that is true. It should not, it should be lifted above the ground, that is true either. That is true. So it is really the same stuff, just completely the same. It will just have different interaction. Do I need throw-in spell then, or should I just base real spells on top of this? I'm not yet implementing the logic to interact with anything, so let's say that we have this stuff already. Then next thing is point of contact. I still would like to keep the throw-in spell class in here, because it might get handy at some point. Point of contact spell. I'm thinking if I should base them all off simple interactive objects or not. Because I have a bunch of logic in here, and some of that logic will be reused. Like start interaction will be the same for almost everything. Stop interaction will be slightly different for them. Initiate throw-in and cancel throw-in will be entirely different. And we don't need any of this. Okay. So it's interactive object. Now let's say that we want to implement all the abstracts. Needs long interaction returns true. Should I create spell base, which will always return true for need long interaction? Most likely. But if it's the only thing that is common between them, then why bother? Okay. Public float spell duration. Private void is casting. Private boolean, of course. Variable elapsed duration equal y boolean float 0. Okay, so now on initiate throwing we should say that it is casting stream. On start interaction we should do the same stuff that simple interactive object does, I believe, which is my rigid body abs. I'll not need to restore a bunch of stuff, so let's copy this block. Let's order everything in a way that it should be this, then cancel throwing over here. Like this. Okay, so I will need this hand stuff. And then restore parent, I will need it. I will create it. No, I don't need the restore parent, there is nothing to restore. This. Then it will not have rigid body ever, so no reason to use it. I will not need to restore the layer. I'm not sure I need to change this stuff, but let's do it. Yeah, let us change it. Or I'm thinking if I might want to put it on a different layer from the hand, so it can interact with something. It is highly unlikely that I want to, but for example, let's think that it's a particle emitter and I want particles to interact with something, and I will need to put particles on some layer. Okay, let's not modify this. And constants really small. Okay, yeah, no reason for this. Okay, this is a really simple start interaction. Cancel is casting. Equals false. Is casting equals false. And here again is casting equals false. So what is the difference between stop interaction and cancel throwing for me? There is none. Just absolutely no difference. They do the same stuff. Okay. So I should call this. Then, next thing. On update, I should check durations. If is casting. Should it be abstract? I think it should. Public virtual void do action. And here I will say load time. Пусти человека. Свет, пусти человека. Ну что? Sorry. Is casting. Now I have a kid crying in there. Okay, I think I will complete this part, and this will be it for today's stream. As I promised, it will be a really short one today. So if it's is casting, then var time equals time dot no time dot delta time, and elapsed duration plus equal time if elapsed duration is higher than spell duration. Let's put some default value in here. We'll say it's 5 seconds. Then elapsed equal to spell duration. This doesn't matter. Then time equals elapsed minus spell duration. So I should lower this time that it was cast, because it can influence the power or something like that. Then I should do action what's the problem? Yeah, sure. Time more recall. Okay, so private pool should destroy equals first. So should destroy is actually this, and I will destroy it on the next frame. If should destroy, then object dot destroy game object. This is not really a nice way to do this, because I'm not using any pools, which it means that I'm not using any pools. That means that if I have a lot of spells at the same time, they get depleted over time, I will have some lags. As asset creation is harder than just... So creating a new object is much harder than reusing an old one and resetting all its parameters back. But I don't think this is the case, because it's highly unlikely that I will have a lot of spells at the same moment that I will really need to reuse. I think I can just do it like this, and this should be fine. And this should actually be abstract, but for now, let's say this time. And that's it. For throwing spell, what I will need to do, I need to create collision processing. I need to create something like power, because it can have different, something like power. So when it collides with something, it uses its power on the object, and when power is depleted, disappears. And for the object it collides with, if it can get, for example, for a fireball, it collides with the building, and it can give part of its power to the building, and building starts burning and then fly further, or it can get soaked into the building because it already put on fire 2 or 3 different buildings. It should not last forever. The object itself should tell how much power is being soaked. So yeah, I think something like this. Yeah, I think this is good. And it works for all of them. The same for point of contact spells. What is around there? Again. For point of contact spells, this do action will be the main block. Undefined action. I want to make it abstract, but for testing purposes I first will make it virtual, and then I will override it better. And afterwards I will do the overtime spell and gesture-based spell in the next stream, I think. Okay, thanks everyone for watching. We started a new theme today, we started new stuff, and we planned some steps ahead. So, see you on the next streams, the day after tomorrow, I believe. Thank you, bye.